The transport ship descended through Vealoria Prime's purple atmosphere, carrying Earth's delegation to what everyone believed would be a funeral. Ambassador Chin stared through the viewport at the ancient world below, his daughter Mira pressed against the glass beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is the dragon really dying, Papa?" she asked quietly. Chin nodded, his expression grave. "Yes, sweetheart. That's why we're here. To pay our respects." Mira frowned. She had read every book about dragons she could find in the ship's library during their 3-week journey. Dragons were supposed to be strong and fierce, not sad and dying. The landing pad was crowded with ships from across the galaxy. The Zenthari had brought their floating meditation spheres. The Krell delegation stood in perfect formation, their crystalline bodies reflecting the twin suns. Even the rarely seen Moth Collective had sent representatives, their wings shimmering with concern. Everyone had come for Keeper Zarthaxis, the oldest living being in the known galaxy. For 6 months, the ancient Draconii had refused all food. He was fading, and with him would go the Genesis Archives, the sacred library containing the genetic memory of 500 extinct civilizations. Without a chosen successor, that knowledge would die forever. Ambassador Chen led his small team through the diplomatic pavilion where representatives from dozens of worlds gathered in anxious clusters. Mira held her father's hand tightly, overwhelmed by the strange smells and sounds. A Zenthari delegate floated past, leaving a trail of silver mist. 2 Krell discussed something in their musical language that sounded like wind chimes. "The humans have finally arrived," someone said loudly. Mira looked up to see a tall being covered in blue scales, wearing elaborate golden robes. "Though I fail to see what purpose it serves. Your species has been part of the Council for barely 10 years. What could you possibly offer that we have not already tried?" Chin kept his voice polite. "We came to show respect, Council Member Vrax. Nothing more." Vrax snorted. "Respect. Yes. Well, the Keeper has rejected offerings from every species here. The finest Krell physicians cannot help him. The Moth Collective's empaths cannot reach his mind. Even the Zenthari elders who have studied dragon physiology for centuries admit defeat. He simply wishes to die." Mira tugged her father's sleeve. "But why? Why would he want to die?" Vrax looked down at her as if noticing her for the first time. His eyes narrowed. "Ambassador Chin, surely you did not bring a human child to a death watch? This is highly inappropriate." "She insisted on coming," Chin said carefully. "And I saw no harm in it." "No harm." Vrax's voice rose. "This is a solemn occasion, not a vacation for offspring. The Keeper is ancient beyond your comprehension. He has guarded the archives since before your world even developed written language. He deserves dignity in his final days, not to be gawked at by children." Other delegates murmured agreement. Mira felt her cheeks burn with shame, but she straightened her shoulders. "I didn't come to gawk. I came because he's sad and nobody should be sad and alone." Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. Vrax waved a dismissive hand. "The naivety of youth. Child, the Keeper has been offered meats from the finest hunting worlds. Crystallized starlight from the Corona Nebula. Energy essence distilled from young stars. He refuses everything. What makes you think loneliness has anything to do with it?" Mira didn't have an answer. She just knew, deep in her heart, that something was wrong with the way everyone was acting. They talked about the dragon like he was already dead, like he was a problem to solve instead of someone who was hurting. That night, while her father attended another useless diplomatic meeting, Mira made a decision. She packed her backpack with her flashlight, her favorite book, and the peanut butter and jelly sandwich her father had made for her lunch. Then she slipped out of their quarters and went to find the dragon everyone had given up on. She wanted to meet him herself. The corridors of the ancient temple were empty and silent. Mira walked carefully, her small flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were covered in carvings that seemed to move in the flickering light, telling stories thousands of years old. She felt scared but kept walking. The dragon needed a friend and she was determined to be one. She found the entrance to the guardian chamber at the end of a long hallway. The massive doors stood open as if waiting. Mira took a deep breath and stepped inside. The chamber was enormous, bigger than any building she had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling disappeared into darkness high above. And there, in the center of the room, lay Zarthaxis. Mira had imagined dragons as fierce and powerful, breathing fire and roaring. But the creature before her looked nothing like that. He was massive, yes, his body was the size of 3 houses placed together. His scales, which might have once shimmered like emeralds, were now dull and gray. His wings lay folded against his sides, thin and fragile looking. His enormous head rested on the stone floor and his eyes were closed. He looked so sad and tired that Mira felt tears prick her eyes. She walked closer, her footsteps echoing softly. "Hello," she said quietly. "My name is Mira. I came to visit you." For a long moment nothing happened. Then, slowly, one massive eyelid opened. An eye the size of Mira's whole body focused on her. It was deep amber, ancient and weary. "A human child," a voice said inside her head, making her jump. It was not loud, but it felt heavy, like each word weighed 1,000 pounds. "You should not be here, little one. This is a place of endings." Mira swallowed her fear. "I know you're sick. Everyone says you won't eat. But I thought maybe you were lonely. So I came to sit with you if that's okay." The dragon's eye studied her for a long moment. "Lonely," he repeated slowly, as if tasting an unfamiliar word. "How strange. Go back to your people, child. There is nothing for you here." But Mira didn't leave. Instead, she walked to a spot near the dragon's head and sat down cross-legged on the cold stone floor. She pulled off her backpack and took out her sandwich, wrapped in paper. "I brought lunch," she said, unwrapping it carefully. The smell of peanut butter and grape jelly filled the air. "My papa makes the best sandwiches. He cuts off the crusts and everything." She took a small bite and chewed thoughtfully. The dragon watched her with that one enormous eye, looking confused. "You are eating in the presence of a dying guardian?" the voice in her head asked. "Is this some human ritual I do not understand?" Mira shook her head. "No ritual. I'm just hungry and I thought you might be too." She looked at her sandwich, then at the dragon. Making a decision, she carefully broke it in half. She stood up and walked to the dragon's massive head, placing half the sandwich on the stone right in front of his nose. "Here," she said simply. "It's not much, but it's really good. My dad made it with extra peanut butter just the way I like it. You can have half." Zarthaxis stared at the small offering as if he had never seen anything like it in his 10,000 years of life. His nostrils flared slightly, taking in the scent. "What is this?" he asked, his mental voice quieter now, almost uncertain. "Half my sandwich," Mira explained, sitting back down with her portion. "I figured you might be lonely eating by yourself. Want to share? Food tastes better when you share it with someone. That's what my mama always said before she got sick." The dragon's eye closed for a moment. When it opened again, something had changed. There was a wetness there that might have been tears, though Mira wasn't sure dragons could cry. "Child," Zarthaxis whispered in her mind. "What is your name?" "Mira. Mirachin. What's yours?" "I mean, I know it's Keeper Zarthaxis, but can I just call you Zar?" The dragon lowered his massive head until his nose almost touched the half sandwich. Mira watched, holding her breath, as Zarthaxis opened his enormous mouth slightly. His tongue, purple and careful, reached out and took the small offering. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully, as if tasting something far more precious than bread and peanut butter. "It is sweet," he said in her mind. "And strange. But good." Mira smiled and took another bite of her half. They sat together in comfortable silence, sharing the simple meal. When they finished, Zarthaxis sighed deeply, and Mira could have sworn his scales looked a tiny bit brighter. "Would you like some water?" she asked, pulling out her bottle. "I can't share this one because I already drank from it, but I can get you fresh water if you want." Before Zar could answer, voices echoed from the corridor outside. Footsteps rushed toward the chamber. Ambassador Chin burst through the doors, followed by Council Member Vrax and a dozen other aliens, all talking loudly and urgently. "Mira," her father shouted, relief and anger mixing in his voice. "What were you thinking? You can't just wander off like that." But everyone stopped talking when they saw what was happening. The ancient dragon had lifted his head off the floor. His eyes were open and alert. And he was looking at the small human child sitting peacefully beside him. Vrax stepped forward, his scales shimmering with shock. "Keeper Zarthaxis, you moved?" "You responded. What has happened here?" The dragon's gaze shifted to the assembled crowd. His mental voice reached all of them at once, making several aliens flinch at the sudden connection. "This human child has done what none of you could accomplish in 6 months. She reminded me why I might wish to continue living." "But how?" Vrax demanded. "We brought you the finest foods from across the galaxy. Star meat aged for centuries. Crystallized essence of nebulas. What did this child offer that we did not?" Zarthaxis was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle but firm. "She offered me half of her own food. Not because she wanted something from me. Not because it was her duty. Not because she feared what would happen if I died. She offered it because she saw me and thought I looked hungry and alone. She shared her meal expecting nothing in return. The dragon's eyes swept across the gathered aliens. For 10,000 years I have received offerings. Every species in this galaxy has given me gifts. Precious metals. Rare meats. Ancient artifacts. They gave me what they thought a dragon should want. What they believed would please a guardian. But not once, in all those countless years, did anyone simply sit beside me and share their own food as an equal. As a friend. Myra's father knelt beside his daughter, checking her over for injuries. "Mira, you should have told me where you were going," he said softly. "I'm sorry, Papa." But Zar was alone. Nobody was actually talking to him. They were just leaving food and walking away like he was a statue instead of a person. Vrax shook his head in disbelief. "But Keeper, surely you cannot mean that a simple sandwich succeeded where our finest offerings failed? There must be something more. Some biological compatibility between humans and Draconii? You still do not understand," Zarthaxis said, and there was sadness in his mental voice. "I was not dying because my body lacked nutrition. I was fading because my spirit had grown tired. For centuries, everyone has treated me as a monument to guard, a problem to solve, a resource to maintain. This child treated me as someone who might be lonely, someone who might want company, someone worth sharing lunch with." The dragon slowly rose to his feet. Several aliens gasped and stepped back. He stretched his wings slightly, and though they trembled with weakness, they no longer looked quite so fragile. "I find myself hungry," Zarthaxis announced. "But I will only accept food that is offered with genuine care. Food that is shared, not simply given. Ambassador Chin, would you perhaps know how to prepare more of this peanut butter sandwich?" News of what happened spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within days, every major news network was broadcasting the story of the human child who saved the ancient guardian with half a sandwich. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss the implications. Ambassador Chin stood before the council chambers, Mira by his side, while hundreds of alien representatives watched from their seats. The room buzzed with conversation in dozens of languages. Council leader Maven, a tall being made entirely of living crystal, called for silence. "We have analyzed the events on Veloria Prime extensively. We must understand how humanity succeeded where all other species failed. This is not merely about one dragon. This represents a gap in our understanding of interspecies relations." Over the next week, researchers from across the galaxy descended on the human embassy. They studied everything about human culture, looking for the secret. Anthropologists reviewed thousands of hours of human behavior. Psychologists tested human emotional responses. Biologists examined human brain chemistry. Dr. Salix, a Zenthari scientist, presented findings to the council. "We have discovered something remarkable. Humans are one of only 3 known species in the galaxy that ritually share meals as a primary form of social bonding. Most species eat functionally or alone. The act of breaking bread together, as humans call it, is deeply embedded in their psychology and culture." Council member Vrax, still skeptical, waved a dismissive hand. "Surely this is an exaggeration. Many species eat in groups. Eating in proximity is different from sharing," Dr. Salix explained. "Humans actively divide their food with others, even when resources are limited. They invite strangers to their tables. They cook for the sick and grieving. They view refusing to share a meal as one of the deepest insults. This behavior is instinctive for them." Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening on Veloria Prime. Zarthaxis was growing stronger each day, but he would only eat meals that humans prepared and shared with him. Ambassador Chin started a routine of having breakfast with the dragon every morning. Other embassy staff took turns having lunch and dinner with him. They did not just leave food and go. They stayed. They talked. They laughed. Mira visited Zar every afternoon after her lessons. She would sit on his massive paw and read stories aloud while he listened. Sometimes she brought her homework and asked him questions about history. The ancient dragon, who had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, found himself explaining grammar to a 7-year-old human child. "You were there when the Krell built their first city?" Mira asked one day, her eyes wide. "That was in my history book. What was it like?" Zar's eyes gleamed with memory. Beautiful and chaotic. They sang the buildings into existence with their harmonic resonance. But they argued constantly about the design. "I believe it took them 50 years to agree on where to place the central plaza." Mira giggled. "That's silly. Why didn't they just vote?" The concept of voting had not been invented yet, small friend. These moments were recorded and studied. The galaxy watched in fascination as the ancient, isolated guardian became social and animated. But the researchers noticed something else too. Humans throughout the galaxy were inadvertently changing diplomatic relations everywhere they went. A human trade officer on the Krell homeworld had started bringing coffee to morning negotiations. Within months, the previously formal meetings had become collaborative brainstorming sessions. On the Moth Collective Station, a human engineer had begun cooking dinner for her alien co-workers every Friday. The team's productivity had increased by 40%, and several long-standing disputes had been resolved over pasta. Dr. Salix presented more findings. We are seeing a pattern. Wherever humans establish a presence, social cohesion improves. Not through superior technology or diplomatic skill, but through simple acts of sharing. They bring food to meetings. They check if colleagues have eaten. They celebrate with communal meals. Other species initially found this behavior strange or suspicious, but over time they begin to reciprocate. Council leader Maven leaned forward. Are you suggesting that humanity has been accidentally fixing diplomatic problems across the galaxy simply by being themselves? That is exactly what I am suggesting, Dr. Salix replied. 6 months passed, and Vealoria Prime transformed into something no one had expected. The human embassy, once a simple diplomatic building, had become the heart of the planet. A garden now grew outside where different species worked together, planting foods from their homeworlds. Every week, there was a potluck dinner where aliens brought dishes to share, teaching each other about their cultures through taste and story. The Genesis archives, sealed for millennia except to scholars, began opening its doors wider. Zarthaxes, healthy and vibrant again, started giving tours himself. He walked through the ancient halls with groups of visitors, telling stories of civilizations long gone, answering questions, and sharing the wisdom he had guarded alone for so long. Mira, now 8 years old, had become something of a celebrity across the galaxy. Artists painted her sharing the sandwich. Musicians wrote songs about the child and the dragon. But she remained the same curious, kind girl she had always been. She split her time between Earth school through video lessons and her afternoons with Zar, learning history that no classroom could teach. One afternoon, as purple sunlight filtered through the archive's crystal windows, Mira sat on Zar's forearm while he carefully turned the pages of an ancient book with his claw. She was teaching him a hand-clapping game she had learned from her friends back on Earth. So you clap once, then twice, then touch thumbs, she explained, demonstrating with her small hands against his massive claw. It's silly but it's fun. Zar attempted the pattern, his movements surprisingly delicate for such an enormous creature. I have studied the mathematics of collapsing stars and the poetry of extinct civilizations, yet this hand-clapping game is perhaps the most challenging thing I have learned in centuries. Mira laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber. Other visitors, a mixed group of Krell, Zenthari and humans, looked over and smiled. This had become normal now, the ancient guardian playing games with a child, acting not like a distant monument but like a grandfather with his granddaughter. Ambassador Chin approached, carrying 2 cups of hot chocolate. Mira, we need to talk. Your school year on Earth starts in 2 weeks. We need to go home soon. Myra's smile faded. She looked up at Zar, her eyes suddenly wet. But I don't want to leave you. You'll be alone again. Zar lowered his head until his nose touched her gently. Small friend, I will never be alone again. You taught me something more valuable than any treasure in these archives. You taught me that connection is not a luxury but a necessity. That even a guardian needs companionship. But what if you get sad again? Mira asked, her voice small. Then I will remember that I have friends across the galaxy who would share their lunch with me. And you will return during your school breaks, yes? You promised to teach me more Earth games. The Galactic Council had already made their decision. The Mira Doctrine, as it came to be called, became official policy. All diplomatic missions now required cultural exchange programs, not just political negotiations. Species were encouraged to share meals, traditions, and stories. The Council even established exchange programs where young members of different species could learn from each other. Humanity's role in the galaxy shifted overnight. They were no longer the young, inexperienced species that barely deserved a seat at the Council. They became mediators, teachers of a lesson the ancient galaxy had forgotten. Earth's greatest export was not technology or resources, but the simple revolutionary act of breaking bread together. On Myra's last evening before returning to Earth, she and Zar sat together watching the twin suns set. She had packed a special sandwich for the occasion, and they split it as they had that first night. Zar, why did you really start eating again? Mira asked quietly. Was it really just because of the sandwich? The ancient dragon was silent for a moment, his amber eyes reflecting the sunset. For 10,000 years I existed. I guarded. I endured. but I had forgotten how to live. You reminded me that sharing, whether food, stories, or simply time, is what makes existence meaningful. Your species may be young and small by galactic standards, but you remember what we all forgot. We are not meant to face eternity alone. Mira hugged his claw tightly. Want to split a cookie before I go? Zar's rumbling laugh shook the chamber. Always, small friend. Always,